Since March of 2020, when schools in North Dakota were closed, NDU has received literally thousands of questions about schools, distance learning, and now, most importantly, reopening. The issue of reopening has been left to an individual school district in light of the fact that we have approximately 175 school districts in the state of North Dakota. It's really difficult to give answers to different fact situations. The situation that they face in Fargo may be different than the situation they face up in Crosby or down in Hettinger. What we're going to try to do today is answer as many of the questions that we can, because we receive multiple questions from educators who are just worried about their kids, most importantly, and then of course about themselves and their families. What we try to do is take the most common questions that we received and to provide answers to you. If you have other questions that we don't get to today, send an email down to NDU to your staff representative, and we will try our best to get you an answer as quickly as possible, because this situation is urgent. There are school districts in the state of North Dakota that are going to start in less than 4 weeks. And we need to make sure that you have as much information as you can so that you can get prepared and that you can ask questions of your school administrators if there are certain positions that they're taking that you don't either understand or agree with. We need you to ask questions. We'll try to provide you with the best answers we can, with the understanding that there just aren't a lot of good answers here. So one of the first questions that we're having to deal with in regards to the reopening is the wearing of face masks. At the present time, school districts are drafting these reopening plans and getting them approved by local public health units. We've seen a few, and as expected, there are some that require the wearing of face masks by students and staff. And then we've seen a couple where that's not been required. So the question that we've been asked is, can a school board require the wearing of face masks or face coverings by students and staff members? In order to answer that question, we really have to look at who's been given the authority to make those decisions. In North Dakota, in the North Dakota Constitution, the Constitution directs the legislature to create and provide a system of public school education for K-12 students. What the legislature did over 100 years ago was to establish school districts and school boards. And the legislature gave them the authority to make decisions in regards to the management and the operation of school districts. They are given those general powers, and there is nothing, of course, in statute that's been passed by the legislature which would deal with the specific topic of the wearing of face masks. So the general answer is, can a school board require the wearing of face masks and face coverings by students and staff members? The answer to that question is yes, they do have that authority. How they exercise that authority is up to them. Hopefully they will take the input of parents and staff members and teachers and ESPs and other people in regards to that issue, but they do have the authority to make that designation, whether they designate that you should wear them or you must wear them or you can wear them. That's the answer. The second question that goes hand in hand with the authority to establish rules and regulations regarding the wearing of face masks is the question of, is it somehow unconstitutional? Does it infringe upon my individual freedom to be required to wear a face mask, or in the alternative, that I'm not required to wear a face mask when in fact I think I need to do so? In North Dakota, in order to hold a law or an action of a governmental agency to be unconstitutional, you have to have 4 justices of the North Dakota Supreme Court rule that the act or the regulation is unconstitutional. I have found no case, obviously, where the North Dakota Supreme Court has ruled on that issue. Most oftentimes, our Supreme Court will find that the acts and the regulations that are passed by school boards in the state are in fact constitutional. And I'm fairly confident that under the current pandemic that we're in, that the North Dakota Supreme Court would find that a school board regulation mandating the wearing of face masks and face coverings was in fact constitutional. There are certain times where individual liberty must give way to the public good, and I believe that the North Dakota Supreme Court, if faced with that issue, would make that finding. A very common question that we've been asked, simply from the perspective that teachers and staff members simply don't know, is can a contracted staff member refuse to go to school based on the fear of contracting COVID-19? In my example, the individual is not symptomatic. They are just concerned that they will contract COVID-19 if they attend school, attend to their contracted duties. In light of the current pandemic, I don't believe that a staff member could refuse to go to school simply on the basis that they are afraid that they might contract COVID-19. The exception to that would be is if that fear turned into some type of condition which prevented the teacher or the other staff member or an ESPB member from actually performing their job, that it reached such a level that the anxiety and concern basically turned into a disability or could be characterized as a disability. But simply having fear that you would contract the virus is not a sufficient basis to stay home and avoid your contracted duties. My concern would be is that if a staff member or a teacher provided that reason to their administrator, they would most likely be ordered to return to their contracted duties, and in the event that they didn't, they could face charges of being insubordinate, which may require their termination or at least a hearing on the matter. May a school district administrator request medical information from a staff member because the contracted staff member is showing signs of COVID? The topic of providing medical information to your employer is always a very controversial topic. People are very guarded about their medical conditions, and they don't want to provide that kind of information to their employers or to their administrators. The EEOC, which is the governmental agency that enforces and administers the Americans with Disabilities Act, has come out and basically said that employers can request from their employees medical documentation in the event that employee is showing signs of COVID or has expressed that they believe that they have COVID symptoms. This is not going to be a situation where a teacher or other staff member can indicate to their administration that they have COVID and try to keep that secret. That information will have to be provided to the administration. Of course, the question that is coupled with that is, where does that information go if a teacher provides that type of information to the school district? It should be kept confidential. North Dakota, one of the exceptions to the North Dakota Open Records Law is an exception to, or an exception for medical files. Medical information must be held confidential and exempt from the Open Records Law. And so if a staff member is asked by an administrator to provide information in regards to their medical condition in order to justify a leave or something like that, the staff member has to comply, and that information will be held in a medical file. Another question that we've been asked is, can the school district mandate the taking of a temperature for staff members and students? In order to answer that question, I'm relying upon the documentation that's been presented on the internet by the EEOC. The EEOC basically indicates that the taking of a temperature is a medical procedure. Employers are given the authority to ask that employees submit to medical procedures if it's job related or it is because of a business necessity. In the case of taking your temperature, I am of the opinion that a school district could require both staff members, teachers, ESP members, and students to have their temperature taken. As a matter of fact, I had my first court hearing in 4.5 months a few days ago, and when I walked into the courthouse, the first thing they did was take my name, and the second thing they did was take my temperature. So I think that your school district does have the right to take your temperature. Another question that we're often asked is in regards to the use of sick leave. Sick leave is provided to teachers by statute. There are also numerous negotiated agreements throughout the state of North Dakota that provide for sick leave and, more importantly, the accumulation of sick leave. I don't think there's any doubt of the fact that if a staff member, teacher contracted the coronavirus, that they would be able to use their sick leave. There's no question in my mind about that. The tougher question is whether or not you can use sick leave when you are simply asked to be quarantined. You believe that you've been exposed to somebody who may have been exposed to coronavirus, or there are facts and circumstances which lead to the conclusion that you may have been exposed or you're exhibiting symptoms. Can you use that if you are simply quarantined? I think the answer to that question is also yes. I believe that you can use your sick leave. Another question we've been asked is whether a school district can administer or require that a COVID-19 test be provided to employees or given to employees prior to them returning to work. I think the answer to that question is yes. Under the current federal laws and state laws, medical procedures can be required by employers if it is either a business necessity or it is job related. Obviously, everybody is concerned about reopening, and everybody is concerned about individuals entering school buildings that either have been exposed to COVID-19 or have the symptoms. I think that those types of tests can be given and required.